or rather return, so that we get underway with our Kickstarter discussion. Uganda's 62 years of independence. I have with me the president of the National Economic Empowerment Dialogue Party, that is NED, Joseph Kabuleta. He will be, of course, offering us some perspective later. We also hope to speak to Israel Mayengo, a senior citizen, one who has been around, seen it all, and of course his perspective will come in handy in as far as the celebrations today are concerned. Joseph, we were struggling to contain ourselves as we listened to Jackson and as he spoke to the people in Busia, particularly the lady who decided to make the point very clear by kneeling down. She is begging, okay, that something is done to the unemployment spectre that is in Busia. But this is not only an issue for Busia as a constituency or as a district or as a region. Across the country, people want jobs. We'll be delving into what true independence is for that matter. But given the celebrations, the fact that Busia was chosen says a lot. It's our gateway, the point where our economy comes to life. If they close Busia today for a week and close Malaba, for example, too, economic collapse can be a possibility. Why is it that when you see on screen, I could only see a building that seems like it was the former Uganda, I was going to say Uganda crane bank, a building standing almost alone in the middle of shacks and makeshift business establishments. Is this where we should be in terms of independence?
Unfortunately, it's the reality that there's been an evident stagnation in this country, to the point that there was a time when actually there was real growth, when we were excited about peace ushered in. You remember the days of peace ushered in. And that almost lasted 10 years when people were now a lot more confident.
After 1986.
After 1986, people were a lot more confident that they were not going to die, because previously people were actually eating everything they got. There was this thing, nobody was planning for old age.
That's right.
Now, after this government came into power, people became a bit more confident that they are going to live longer. So they started planning for old age. So there was a bit of a rosy period in those first 10 years. And maybe even I could stretch it to 15. But then afterwards, the political question started coming into play, because by that time, so many things started shaping up in a certain way. Those who were privileged started, there was a clear demarcation between those who were privileged and those who were not. And now there were so many people who were astute businessmen who had thrived previously, who were brought down, and deliberately, of course. And then we created a different kind of businessmen whose only intention is to get their fingers on government coffers. So now you see speculators, a lot of
tenderpreneurs.
Tenderpreneurs, a lot of speculation, and everybody targeting the same government coffers. And people who are really involved in real business have been pushed almost into some kind of backwaters sort of thing, Chikubu and all that.
Yeah.
And so, whereas previously, actually, there were businessmen who could, build things which would give jobs to people like that. Now, what that creates is a scenario where everybody is asking the president. I'm sure he likes it because he loves that, where every single, dispute is settled by
his table.
Somehow gets to his table. And it's sad because there was a time, okay, now this really depicted, because it was a story that went around town. It depicted for me how far we've fallen as a country in terms of having any functional systems rather than having one person who is calling the shots. When there was a dispute over some piece of land or something among rich people in Muyenga, and then there was this apparently poor person who was LC1 chairman, and they start arguing and arguments go back and forth. Then after some time, everybody starts saying, I know the president. I know everyone knows the president. Then it turns out the poor guy actually calls the president, and the president actually picks And that settles the argument. All the others say, we are sorry, sir. You know, because for them, what they had in mind is going through proxies to get to him. Now, this one actually got on the phone
and called,
and the guy actually picked and spoke. Now that gave him power. Because now
all of a sudden,
now, what the dispute was, who was in the right and was the wrong, was settled by who can talk to the president. Now, that's how we've become, even a family cannot be that disjointed. Much less a country. Now, and it is so, it pops itself head up in so many areas. Because first of all, the middle class, because of those economic policies where everybody is looking at government coffers, the middle class has been killed. And the middle class are the people who actually give jobs to people.
Yeah.
In most big economies, middle class give jobs to 70% of working people. Now in Uganda, there is absolutely no, even the little middle class that was left was destroyed during COVID, the COVID lockdowns and all that. And so what we have is government bureaucrats, politicians, and the privileged class on the one hand, and on the other hand is everybody saying, sir, government, and they want help over things which they should not be asking government to help them about. So now, that's why we talk about economic empowerment, because that's actually disempowerment. When somebody feels that as soon as they have a camera and a mic in front of them, they are going to kneel down and ask the president to give jobs to my son because he studied. How many people have children who studied? And how many people are going to, so how many people are going to kneel down, and how many jobs can he dish out like that? And reminds me also of the guy who beat off the head of a rat asking for a district. You remember that story?
Yeah, sure.
And now that's what comes to the president is there, and this is your opportunity. Like, there is no criteria on how to get a district. So somebody said, now that dramatic way of doing things is there when there is no clear criteria. So the guy got a rat and bit off its head right in front of the president and said, you have to give us a district. And he was right there in front of the president. And the funny thing is, what I found interesting is the president was so unmoved. So he told the man that now we know you can eat a rat, but as for a district, that will have to wait.
He completely didn't understand that this man had been in the bush.
No, but
maybe
and seen worse things than that. Anyway.
Interesting there. You speak about the fact that everyone, of course, has a son who has either gone to school and may be looking out for a job. So when one kneels and asks the president for the same, that is the dramatization of our shameful condition as a country. But in the Daily Monitor today, in what appears to be the deepest excavation of perspective on independence that I've seen in any newspaper today, Dr. Specioza Wandira Kazibe, a presidential advisor now, but former vice president and very first woman to hold that position, says, and I'm quoting directly here, that President Museveni has shown what it means to be politically independent, which makes you economically independent. I don't know whether that a particular assertion is true, that whether political independence automatically leads to economic independence. But she says, however, ideological independence will only come in when we change the school curriculum. In all the debates that we have as a country, whether it's at organizational level, community level, or national level, there is the tendency to forget that our education system was inherited from the British. It has shaped the minds of the policymakers up to this day. What needs to change and how quickly must it change?
Well, I'll tell you this, to be very honest with you, it has changed for the worse under this regime.
Okay.
There was a time when, now there are things which shock me because when I finished P7, there are volumes of books I would read, which even graduates now would struggle to read. And it was normal.
It was normal at that time to read them?
It was normal for all people to do that. My diction, the way I wrote and everything, by the time I got to S6, there was a clear picture of somebody who is getting educated to some level.
That's right.
Now you get the classic S6 person who has been through IUP and so on. And there's no such thing. And even job interviewers have problems because somebody comes and they have papers, but they don't have anything else about them that shows. And now, I'll tell you this, for instance, let me go back a bit. Because what we inherited from the British in terms of education was not bad, apart from the curriculum, which could be changed. But otherwise, the way people came out baked wasn't bad at all. And it produced some very good leaders. For instance, in 1971, when Amin became president, one of the most powerful institutions was the Student Union, National NUSU, National Union of Students of Uganda. Very, very powerful. They produced leaders across board, and they had a lot of power. And one of the people, one of the institutions which when he still wanted to be a populist in the first year of his power, when he called the students, and they had issues at the time because I think they were arguing with Abu Mayanja as to where they should have their conference, NUSU conference, and the students didn't like Abu Mayanja, who was the Minister of Education
at the time.
And so Amin, in order to appease them, told them that when he realized they had a problem with Abu Mayanja, he told them that, okay, he gave them a national center, conference center. It wasn't like this built at that time, but was there. And to have their conference there, that was much better than they expected. And he even went and changed the Minister of Education because the students didn't like it. That's how powerful the students were. Now, that lasted all through the late 80s when what I call the spirit of Makerere was there. And if you talk to people who were there in that time, and they tell you the sort of things they were arguing about, they would actually have strikes over national events, which the country is going in the wrong direction, and there is a strike and Makerere. And not over food, and not over beans which are not boiled. So now that was the sort of the caliber of leadership that we had from there. And those people who came through that time were tremendous leaders. Now, even when you go abroad, even especially to countries like Kenya and Tanzania, and you find people who went through Makerere at that time, the rosy picture they paint of it is nothing like what it is there right now. Because they speak with it with a lot speak about it with a lot of nostalgia. They were groomed there, they were shaped there, they are now leaders in different countries. Now, somehow it's not like that, and that's a travesty.
All right, 9th October, of course, does offer us rather the point of reflection. And right now, let's get to be joined by Mzee Israel Mayengo. He's a senior citizen, and we are speaking to him from his home. A very good morning, Mzee.
Good morning, my friends.
Yeah, happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence too.
Great. I'm sure you've had Joseph Kabuleta here opining about what ought to be, what was, but I think you're in the best position to give us an idea of the different ages that the country Uganda has gone through, a trajectory that is, of course, littered with so many inconsistencies, contradictions, but that is okay because growth happens that way. What do you make of our 62 years of supposed independence? I must be very specific about this, supposed independence.
Well, let me start with my favorite quotation. It was in 1987 when an Arab visited us here, and he wanted to make to build a hotel in the Seychelles Islands. After we had taken him around by air, we treated him to a dinner, and then asked him whether he had anything to say. He got on his feet, and he opened his hands, and he said, "Here's a country which has everything and nothing."
Wow.
Now, that said, I now look at what actually we're talking about. I think we should not be relying on what has gone by, but on what should be done at the moment. I think the most important thing is to ask ourselves, are we making progress or not? By the time of independence, we were better than Kenya, better than Tanzania, better than most countries on the eastern side of Africa. As I speak today, I think everybody will agree with me when I say that we're at the bottom. The question is, why? I think that's where we should start. We should examine our priorities. Let me give a quick example of priorities. If the people of Busia were asked today to choose either to have the Independence Day celebrated in Busia, costing $1 billion shillings, or whether they would prefer a hospital of 1 billion shillings built in Busia to commemorate the 62nd independence of Uganda. What do you think they would choose? My suspicion, my guess is
they would choose the celebration.
They might choose to have a hospital. I think this is where we are on our priorities. We have been copying things, some of which are actually useless. Just a couple of days ago, we had something called a prayer breakfast. I first heard of those in the United States. Here is a thing which might cost probably a couple of billion shillings, and I don't see where it will benefit the Ugandans. I do think that we need to think for ourselves and find out. Now, going back to the man who said we have everything
and nothing.
The question is, why is it that we're at the bottom? I think everybody will agree that we've been having disagreements among ourselves, particularly causing civil wars. Every civil war costs a huge portion of money which should be getting us to develop somewhere. I hope Alex Mukulu will not be writing again 62 years of bananas, because he wrote 30 years of bananas, and we hope that things will get better. But I cannot imagine that after 62 years of independence, garbage would kill people in the capital, that the roads will be as like ordinary roads on farms in developed countries. I cannot imagine that after listening to the radio station every morning, you hear the results of research done by universities in Europe, in America, and almost never by any university on the African continent. Where are our priorities? Where are we investing? I fear to say, but I think I'm right, that we are investing more in defense than in anything else. And I don't know against whom we are preparing all this huge defense. My suggestion is that we do not leave the whole duty of guiding the country to one person. That we use our collective effort in the house called the Parliament to design a way of how we can make progress. And I think that means that we have to look at our constitution once again, which is the guideline on how we are going to live together, to avoid the conflicts which we've been having, and be able to concentrate on how to make our life better. But this business of saying, here we are, 60 years, and we can say 60 years of poor roads, 60 years of poor education, 60 years of poor health, 60 years of worse and worse poverty, when the countries are getting better. I think we need to review how we live together and how we conduct our affairs.
All right.
What I mean is,
yeah, thank you very much,
we need to review our constitution.
Okay.
To be able to make it capable of living, of making us live harmoniously together, so that we don't have the quarrels that we've been having, so that we avoid the civil wars that have brought us back, and so that we don't work for the benefit of the Western world. Because I believe all people should now realize that the more we fight, the more the Western world becomes happy. It's a pity that we have copied them so much. We are still using the education system, and the unfortunate thing is, the more people we have educated, the more thieves we have developed, which is a pity.
All right, thank you very much. We shall be coming back to you very shortly for a question that many Ugandans would love answers to. Of course, you've offered us what is no doubt very insightful perspective on what can be done. But let me return quickly to Joseph Kabuleta, who is with me here in studio. What do you make of the submissions of Mzee Israel Mayengo? He's very what ought to be done. He's also very nostalgic about the kind of trajectory that Uganda had taken, especially after independence, that somehow ran into troubled waters. What's your take on his submission?
Of course, he's somebody who has lived through it, from independence to now, which I haven't. And I agree with everything. He said about one, and that is that we need another constitution to iron out the differences that we have. The reality is that of course, that doesn't mean we don't need another constitution. I'm not disputing that. And neither am I saying we don't. My issue is that constitutions ride on goodwill, on the goodwill of the leaders to follow the constitutions.
That's right. Which
we have not seen in Uganda. Because the 1995 document wasn't perfect, but wasn't bad at all. It was a fairly good document. But over the years, we've shown that at the whims of one person, it can be turned around left, right, and center, and nothing sticks when there's no goodwill. By the way, that's and right. Now even the whole, it's even happening. It's sad because people feel that a constitution stands in the way of what they want, and in some countries where the constitutionalism is so strong, they will only give their opinions, but that they will stop at that.
That's right.
But here, it doesn't stop just at giving opinions. By the way, even in America, the other day I was listening to former Secretary of State John Kerry saying that the Constitution is a big problem, the First Amendment should be removed, and so on. Like, what he was saying was absolutely radical for anybody who is in America, but it's going to stop there. He's going to talk about it and it will end there. It will end there. But he's not going to, there's nothing he can do because of the strength of constitutionalism in that country, there is very little he can do to change it.
That's right.
But he can only give his opinion, which of course so many people do. But now, here we just tear it apart at a whim. But anyway, that said, for me, the issue as far as I'm concerned is we are still grappling with the same issues that we had in 1962, that we fought for independence over in 1962. And there's a very clear reason why, for instance, we are much better than so many of the countries around us. There's the famous story of South Korea and so on, how we are much better than them and richer, I mean, and how, of course, now you know how far they are, and so on, even the countries around East Africa. And now that was because at the time, economies were based purely on, mostly on agriculture. And that's an area in which we had an advantage. An advantage in. But now when the things developed and were supposed to get into industrialization and were supposed to get into delivering services and were supposed to get into improving our products, value addition of our products, then we stalled. And now we remained stuck in the agriculture mode. Now other people just would come and take our agricultural produce and go and add value and get more money than us. But at the time when it was, because for instance during Amin's regime, Uganda had a lot of money. Amin had a lot of money by then because coffee prices were high. Really high. That's all he needed. But now you can't have money to run a nation just because coffee prices are high. First of all, so many other countries are producing coffee. Secondly, it takes a lot more. Okay? Now that's where the other arguments come in. And excuse me, I'm going to use this example that I've also seen in sport, for instance. At underage competitions, if you put Ugandan kids with any kids from anywhere in the world, they're just as good, as long as they are 8 years and below. Because there it's pure about talent. It's pure about talent, yeah. But now when they get to an older age, it has to be about organization, training, and so all the other things, mindset and so on. That's where we lag behind. Discipline. And now talent on its own can't carry you into a professional footballer. That's right. So you basically you'll have players who will come and they are very talented up to a certain age, then they fall behind. And then when you look at people who are earning big money from football, they are not there. But they are for example, now that's the same thing with our mentality. You're very right, because when you look at the sporting world right now, the likes of the players who are making a lot of money were beaten by this league of ours, where the boys were 15. The Kampala Kids League, they were being beaten 7-0. Now they are making a lot more money than the rest. But let me just return to Mzee Israel Mayengo. Of course, his wisdom and the fact that he has lived through these ages that do define Uganda's political, economic, as well as social trajectory. Mzee Mayengo, are you with me? Hello? Listening to my friend, Mr. Kabaleta. Yeah, he has some very, very interesting. He says that the 1995 Constitution is a good document. However, he says that one person has been able to manipulate it. Well, that means that it's not good enough to prevent one person from manipulating it. That means that one person has been able to go ahead and manipulate not only the Constitution, but to manipulate the entire Parliament and make it as if it's useless. Actually, what we need is to review the executive part of our Constitution. The judiciary is fairly okay. The legislature is not so much to complain about, except its ridiculously large size and clumsy way of doing things. What we need is to look at the very cause of our disagreements and the civil wars, and that is the executive. The executive. I believe we have never had a smooth change of government from one regime to another,
ever since we started independence, ever since we regained independence, and I emphasize regaining of independence, because this has been a problem which everybody knows, that the first president was taken off by force, the second one was taken off by force, the third one was taken off by force through the process of a civil war, and the two which followed right in the immediately after Idi Amin were also forcefully removed from office. And when President Obote returned, it had to go through the process of a whole 5-year civil war to get a change. Who does not realize that the problem we have is the office of the president? Who does not believe that every country should have a constitution that is a method of governing itself which is suitable for itself? That is where the old man used to say, those ones who made the Constitution of the United States, that a constitution is like a garment. It must be tailored to suit the contours of the wearer. Here now we have the wearer called Uganda. And Uganda is made of several communities, and those communities have to be knitted together into harmony to prevent these conflicts. That means that we should be aiming at the moment at a constitution that prevents one tribe from dominating the others. As long as we say it's the Baganda who are governing us today, problem. As long as we say it's the Northerners who are governing today, it's a problem. As long as we say that the Westerners now who are eating, it's a problem. Isn't it a requirement of us to sit together and say, what now can we do? My suggestion is this, that we get rid of the office of the president. Now that irritates the nerves of selfishness.
Wow.
We get rid of the office of the president as an individual and replace it with a commission with revolving chairmanship
and powers,
so that there should never be an occasion when we shall get such things, such ideas as it's the Baganda who are governing us now. That's where I was asking at the beginning, that we are having huge expenses on defense without worrying about who we are defending ourselves against. Nobody doubts that Kenya is not likely to invade us. Tanzania is not likely to invade us. Rwanda is not likely to invade us. Neither the Congo, nor is the South Sudan. Who are we defending against? We are defending our government against some of the citizens. The excommunication that I'm suggesting will get us free from worries of being overthrown. It will get us, I have put it in a small book called Unpopular Ideas. In the Unpopular Ideas, there's one called the Cardinal Idea. The Cardinal Idea has 28 reasons in favor of a commission with revolving chairmanship, each chairman taking care of the commission for just 1 year, and the vice taking over, and we go on like that, the commission having no time limits, but with the commissioners having time limits.
All right.
I think that may get us away from the civil wars that have debilitated us, that has brought us to where we are, that has brought us far behind Kenya, far behind Tanzania, all of whom used to send their leaders to get their education in Uganda. Before I came out here, I was talking with my wife here, and she said that her mother was a classmate of Madame Nyerere at Nsube here in Chagwe. Would she have come to a place that was inferior to theirs? Wasn't Nyerere a student in Kampala here? We need to rethink and be able to design something that will make us peaceful and therefore make us utilize the country we have. But look at what you have today. We have destroyed the environment. I come from the Sess Islands, which used to be 80% forest. Now it's the opposite. Namamve should be a big, good forest. It's now destroyed. We have to work on the education system to be able to emphasize what we need, not just to copy what the Europeans are telling us. Sell the cooperative unions, and we do that. Destroy all our parastatals, and we destroy them. Now we are trying to build them, to put them together again.
Restore them. All right, Mzee.
Uganda Airlines is being. Uganda Airways is almost nothing to talk about.
All right, thank you very much.
And
I'm afraid I'm going to have
let
to
me conclude. The enemies we have been fighting.
Okay.
That is poverty, ignorance, disease, has been joined by an even worse enemy, corruption. Every school, I'm now suggesting every school should be giving a prize in every class for a student who has been voted by his peers to be the most honest among themselves, and that when the recruiters come around to recruit, they should be recruiting those ones with a record of honesty. That will be one method of fighting corruption. The other method will be getting away a little bit from the European-made laws and forgot the idea of saying prove it, and simply said, is there some suspicion that you've been corrupt here? We have plenty of people waiting at the outside for employment. Just get out. This means that every employee of the public should sign an undertaking that whenever there will be any reasonable suspicion that he has been corrupt, he should be ready to leave his job and be replaced. And anybody who should be replaced who should be expelled from his employment should never be paid by the public or should never be employed by the public again.
All right, thank you very much, Mzee Israel Mayengo. I'm going to have to return to the studio. It's very, very heartbreaking to have to hold you in your submission. I would love to listen to you on and on, because everything that you are sharing, the perspective, the insight, is something that speaks to the realities of our time. And I do hope that some of the aspects that you share can actually be taken on. But let me return to Joseph Kableta. You've had a man who I honestly wouldn't love to interrupt when he talks. We would listen to him on and on and on and still get away without really wanting to. But he has ideas, especially with regard to the fact that maybe the problem, according to him, is the president's office, the position. This is the scenario I'm picturing. If I feel like my lunch is threatened by you, I might not eat lunch if I give you the opportunity. So I work around everything in order to protect the possibility and the assurance that I'll eat lunch. That is our problem as a country. And so whoever gets into power wants to protect the possibility of eating and surviving tomorrow.
Well, the thing is, what he's suggesting is what Switzerland does. You know, Switzerland doesn't have a president or a leader. They actually have a commission, that revolves around. And, well, it has worked for them. But then also, on the other hand, there are countries which have had presidents and it has worked for them. Yeah. So maybe we are looking at a scenario where Chris Igenyi says, let's do away with marriage because he has had 3 failed marriages, I'm just saying. And yet other people are actually...
God forbid.
No, God forbid. And yet other people are actually having successful marriages.
They are successfully married.
So, but I understand why he says that, because there's been a problem with the office of the president. And by the way, even the dictatorship in Uganda is very constitutional because there's a lot of power.
Yeah, so much power has been vested into
in the office of the president. Then there's also excess power which he gets for himself, which is not even in the constitution. But a lot of it is in the constitution.
It's already there.
But now, since it's very unlikely that that is going to happen, as radical an idea, and not even, I mean, it's a good idea as well, but it's very unlikely that it's going to happen. I don't even think so many people would embrace it. The reality is that what has been happening in Africa, because of the lack of very strong institutions, is the country does very well when the president has goodwill, like it was in Botswana. Botswana is one of the highest, it's a very high middle incomes country with almost 8 or 9 times the GDP of Uganda.
That's right.
Okay, it has very few people and all that, but because they had a president who came and ruled for a short time and set the instruments of democracy, and now when somebody comes and is the first post-independence president, and then he leaves power and leaves it to somebody else, the people who come thereafter find it difficult to do the things Museveni has done here. But now, if they are being removed by power, we will never know when Obote would have left power if Amin hadn't overthrown him. And
we would also never know when Amin
would have left power. No, Amin for him, he had stated it that he's a life president.
Yeah.
So that was put out there.
That was his mission.
Yeah, but Museveni knew he was a life president, but he was wise enough not to say it. Because if he had said it at the beginning, probably people would have woken up and fought him. And he'll probably not be president. So, being the sly man that he is, he went giving us in doses. By the time we realize that actually he is he has designs on being a life president, perhaps he was too far gone. There was a lot of power invested in his office, and there is very little that could be done. But Amin had said he wanted to be life president. That was there. But now we will never know how. If Obote was going to adhere to parliamentary system, have no term limits. So what was in 1980 and 1985 was a parliamentary system. So as long as UPC would have more members of parliament, Obote was free to be president for as long as he wants. That's how it is in parliamentary system. So now, that said, that's why we've not had the peaceful exchange of power. But that can be rectified because it has been done so late in countries, you know, post-independence, whatever, when actually at some stage somebody comes and it turns around, okay? For instance, Kenyatta was a life president, died in power. Moi came, ruled for 23 years, then decided to leave at some stage. okay, in 2002.
He was negotiated out.
Okay, that's it. But you know, if he was like, if he had the head of Museveni, only of course Kenya has a lot of people who have an interest in it, so they can't let things like Museveni take place because it comes from abroad.
No, okay.
There's a lot of investment of Western nations in Kenya, so they tell him no, you have to go now for the sake, because of the sake of their investments, which are not here. You understand? So yeah, there's a lot of things you can get away with like Museveni, which you cannot get away with in Kenya. So he was negotiated out,
okay.
But now thereafter, there has been, you know, transitions of power, not always peaceful. Okay, some of them have even
of course,
been
that transition has begun to see a lot of trouble, including the impeachment yesterday of the deputy president.
And I was talking to my, I was reading through the proposals that have been put out by former leader of opposition, Mpuga, and Matthias Mpuga, the amendments he wants in our constitution. And I actually agree with all of them except the deputy president bit. Because he wants it as it is in Kenya, where the deputy president is elected and the president doesn't have the power to fire him like it is in Kenya.
Everywhere I've seen that arrangement, there's a lot of
no, it doesn't work. Because immediately the man knows that he's deputy president.
He can't be fired.
He can't be fired. So he starts working for himself. He starts building his own kingdom.
That's right.
And now that is hardly ever of benefit to the country. And the truth is, you need one head. The only thing that has two heads is a monster. So we don't want to create a monster. So in as much as we've not had luck, I would call it luck, with who our president is, the reality is that our presidents have worked elsewhere. If term limits are there, and there is a time limit to that person, so even if he's very good at cheating elections, he can only cheat it once as an incumbent, and after that the constitution tells him he has to go. And somebody else comes in and takes in, because there is also the other side in Tanzania where they have a one-party, you know, democracy. But okay, democracy. But there was a time when the CCM had all but 2 MPs out of I think 300 and something, 390. Only 2 were from opposition. And that doesn't sound like a country which has any opposition. But of course it changed, and eventually the opposition got some. So all these are issues of governance that we are grappling with as a country. But the advantage is that after we are through with the Museveni dictatorship, we have, which is going to happen very soon, we have an opportunity to rethink everything, having seen the mistakes of other people and even our own, which have been many. And so we can look through and say that, what are we not going to permit? Because we know when somebody gets into power,
this is what is going to happen.
Yeah, you know,
the trappings of power begin to shape their thinking in a different way.
And they think totally different from what they were before. So now, how do we put checks and balances to make sure that people don't get there and start thinking like that? How do we make it known to them that regardless of what you want, you are going to rule for a maximum of 2 terms, and after that you're going to go, whether you want it or not? Because everywhere people are, you know, want... you know, power has its, you know, it's...
All right. Thank you very much, Joseph Kableta. I think let's transition very quickly and allow Mzee Israel Mayengo to give us what is a wrap, especially for Morning at 10 TV. The celebrations, commemorations, and the marking of the 9th of October, it all depends on how you look at it. Some are celebrating, others are commemorating. There are those who are simply marking the day. And that is also context that you should pay attention to. Let me have the last word from Mzee Israel Mayengo. And you had suggested a commission. Somebody says that's a very radical one and won't really work in Uganda. But if I were to ask the very final question, especially with regard to the way forward for the country, has there been any attempt, for example, within your circles, especially statesmen, the older men who have served in public service and all other positions, to talk in order to be able to influence a new direction for our country? Or have you been left to, well, if your environment is anything to go by, enjoy your retirement?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
In 1883, King Leopold II had taken the Congo as his own property. And he sent missionaries to Congo, and he gave them 3 instructions. The first one was, teach those Africans to read, but not to reason. What he meant was, don't allow them to think for themselves. Now, here now is a test of whether we are still following that. We have to think for ourselves to find out what is suitable for us. Now you imagine, a member of parliament is coming up with about 6 amendments to the constitution. That's Mpuga. So Segona has amendments to the constitution he wants to propose. The Minister for Constitutional Affairs, Honorable Mao, has also several suggestions for amendment to the constitution. I also have a few for myself. Let me give you one simple example of mine.
All right.
We now do not have a definition of treason. Any little thing which is done which might harm the president, even as an individual, might be considered treasonous. Now, why is it that when Kennedy was shot in America and assassinated, nobody spoke of treason? When former President of America, Ronald Reagan, is assaulted and injured, nobody was accused of treason. Here now we have a problem of defining treason. The Americans defined it in their constitution and defined what treason is. But today, an African president, if you threw an egg at him, you might be arrested and be charged with treason. Isn't that the way that the King of France, King Louis XIV, used to say that he was France himself? L'État c'est moi. That's what he meant, that he was the state. So if you throw a stone at him,
you're threatening this.
You have thrown a stone at the whole France. So, in other words, all I'm suggesting is that all these suggestions for amendment to the Constitution, plus dozens of others which haven't come out yet, should all be put together and be handed to a Constitutional Review Commission. That's the commission that would consider also my idea of making President Museveni the last president of Uganda, to avoid all these wars of civil wars that we have had.
Maybe,
as I said at the beginning,
a very last one,
that irritates the nerves of selfishness.
All right, he irritates the nerves of selfishness. Have you been invited, for example, to a banquet later today? Any? Mzee Mayengo?
Yes, sir.
Have you been invited to any banquet?
I'm still here.
Yes. Have you been invited to any banquet today for the celebration, either at a municipal or city level, or even at either political party?
No, not at all. Not at all. I do not think. Maybe they think I don't exist anymore. I would think that former members of parliament would be reasonable guests to be invited to occasions of this kind. Actually, I don't even believe that we should spend so much on things of this kind.
All right.
Those are the priorities I was talking about at the beginning. The people need more help. 62 years, and we don't even have a single hospital here because we are spending on trinkets like these ones, funny ideas, like celebrating, commemorating our independence in every district. I'm now expecting them to come to the Seychelles Islands. 62 years, and we don't have a university which produces anything that you can say they has produced research on this. Why? Because we are paying for defense. 62 years, and we cannot have a road to talk about. Let's a piece from Zambia to the clock tower. The 21 kilometers from Bosega to Entebbe is all that we can talk about in 62 years. As I said, I hope Alice Mukuru is not writing another 62 years of bananas.
All right. Thank you very much, Mzee Israel Mayengo, coming to us live.
And I'm not blaming President Museveni. I'm blaming the entire parliament.
All right.
Who sit there and be dumb. Instead of saying, let's get this thing done, let's review ourselves, let's discuss, let's find out why is it that we are having miseries.
Okay.
Instead of happiness.
Thank you very much, Mzee Israel Mayengo, a senior citizen speaking to us there live from his residence in Munyonyo, sitting in very pristine environs and, of course, enjoying his retirement. Joseph Kableta, let's wrap this one up as Uganda begins a new journey into year 63. People can take what Mzee says, they can recondition some of those solutions so that they stand the test of time and be attentive to the realities of our time. You lead what is no doubt a very vibrant young group of people in attempting to recondition the economic base and the thinking of our country. I am Chris Higgeny. I simply do moderate Morning at NTV. I don't have a lot of powers, but I'm going to give you power right now for 2 minutes to give us the most adoptable solutions going forward as a country. Maybe you can practice what you could offer. If somebody, for example, said you were a leader for this nation.
Well, as it's clear there that my thing is economic empowerment. Actually, it's economics. And it's financial. During the campaigns, I called it financial liberation.
Financial liberation.
After that, because of course we have our hands tied financially, so many people. Now, I call it economic empowerment because people are being disempowered. When you see people kneeling down and begging, give us jobs and so on, like that's, they are begging the president just because there's a microphone and a camera in front of them. They are disempowered. And then they're even asking for village model, now household model, and all that. And none of those programs have actually gotten people, at least the whole mass of people out of poverty, and so on. So now, what is empowerment? Empowerment is giving people the ability to make money for themselves through policy, through certain things you can do, for instance, for them. I'll give you one example. In Kabale, they were telling me now, how are you going to do this? You know, get all of this. I told them, are you aware that some of the chips, you know,
the fries,
French fries
yeah,
that we eat come from South Africa? There was a time I went to ShopRite and I was working at New Vision and I said I've come to add some junk food. And they said, the chips haven't yet come. I said, from where? From South Africa. I said, you import potato chips from South Africa?
Potato chips from South Africa.
So that was the last time I ate from there. Now, what if you actually stopped that? Now, suddenly the price of Irish potatoes goes up in Kabale. Those people are empowered without giving them any handouts.
That is right.
You just make policies that are going to make them rich. And now that's just a small example. There are so many others that you can put up there to give people money which they've made for themselves. Because when money comes, and I've seen this in parish development model, when money comes, and there are so many examples, somebody goes and marries another wife and so on. Now when they come and they are asking for the money back because you're supposed to pay it back, he looks at them and says, I thought you had given me the money, and there's nothing you're going to do.
There's nothing you can really do.
You're not going to imprison him. You gave him the money, so now that is disempowerment.
Disempowerment.
Now that's why people are kneeling down, begging, and what. Now we believe in economic empowerment. So that would be the number one station I would park if or when I become president. All right.
Thank you very much. Joseph Kabuleta, President of the National Economic Empowerment Dialogue Party. Earlier, we were speaking to Israel Mayengo, a senior citizen whose perspectives as we celebrate, commemorate, and mark the 62nd anniversary of the country's independence gets underway. Just a reminder that our team is on the ground in Busia, where national events are being held. It's coming to 9 o'clock, and those celebrations should be up running, and the president is expected to speak, as is the norm. That's it for Morning at 10 TV. It's been a pleasure talking to you, interacting with you, and of course, sharing on national discourse on this 9th day of October 2024. I do hope when the 9th of October 2025 comes, the conversation will be flourishing on aspects of real progress economically. Thank you so much. Have yourselves a lovely day.